don't stop.
So hi, and thank you for joining us. I'm Kara Turniak, and I have another one of our Kinder Karate parents here. This is Kelly Antelek. Hi. And her son Lucas has been in our program for about a year. And one of the reasons that I wanted to share Lucas's story with you is because so many times I have children who go through my program and I have no idea about their past or what they've been through or their journey before they came to me. And when I had started writing the book and I asked some parents to share their story, I thought that Kelly had a really good story, and I had no idea about the things that Lucas had done before he came to me. And so we're going to talk about some of those things and how that relates to his Kinder Karate journey. So thank you for doing this for me.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
And I know that your story is going to help so many people because everybody has a different story that somebody can relate to.
Sure.
So what I'd like you to do is just talk a little bit about before you came to the Kinder Karate program, what was Lucas experiencing and kind of what led you to look for something like this program?
Sure. So Lucas is now 5. And when we were starting to look for something for him, he was around 3.5, going on 4. And we were struggling with him in preschool. We were struggling with him in at home. He has 2 much younger sisters and wasn't getting the attention he had gotten prior to them being born. And I think that between that and him he's a very tall child for his age, and he was growing very, very quickly, and he was having trouble with coordination, and he was having trouble in school with attention and focus and discipline and being able to endure the time it would take to write his name, the time it would take to color a picture. So my husband and I talked about it, and we were thinking we needed to do something. And in my head, I kept thinking, karate has a lot of discipline, but there was a lot of places that just didn't have the type of program for younger children,
Right.
with him being so young. And for Lucas, it has to be fun. And I could not imagine him going somewhere where somebody was just going to bark at him because he would just shut down.
Exactly.
So I researched, and on a whim, I just started typing into Google, karate places in the South Hills.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw Kinder Karate come up, I thought, okay, so the name speaks to what I'm looking for, right? And as I was reading on the website, I just thought it sounded cooler and cooler, and then I reached out and called you guys, and I think I caught you on a walk.
You never know, because I take calls all the time. I could be walking the dog, I could be in the car, you never know where you're going to catch me, so
yeah,
that's probably right.
and so got a little information on the phone, and you encouraged us to come to a class, see if you like it, and that's how we kind of got started. He went to one class and immediately wanted to go back like the next day. Mm-hmm. Didn't want to wait a whole week for that class to come again, but convinced him that probably waiting a week would be a good idea. And after going through that first trial period, he loved it. And so what we started seeing after being in the class for a while was he had this ability to learn to focus. So there was this switch of being able to, he's kind of all over the place, and he would flail his arms around and just be super silly. And we had what we were able to realize is we would say, well, Mrs. C would tell you what, you're in karate. How do you deal in karate? And so he would kind of snap to. And then from a more school side of the equation, he was struggling with his writing. He was struggling with his endurance in learning things and being able to maintain focus throughout a day in school. And he was really struggling with his writing and his coloring, as I mentioned before. And his teacher at one point finally approached me and said, do you think there's maybe something here? Like, do you think he might need to be evaluated for some OT issues?
Mm-hmm. OT meaning?
Occupational therapy.
Okay.
Right? And so just his fine motor skills were not there. And so upon evaluation, the occupational therapist said, not only is his fine motor skills not there, his gross motor skills are not there. And so we realized that, because I mentioned before, he's a very tall kid, he was kind of growing at a rate that his body-mind connection just couldn't keep up. And so the gross motor skills were very difficult, which was making the fine motor skills hard to refine.
Yeah.
So if he doesn't have the core strength in his body, if he doesn't have the ability to organize his muscles in a way that he can do things like stand on one foot and kick out or whatever, I've learned through the OT process that writing is just as much about your core strength as it is about the fine motor strength just to manipulate the pencil in your fingers. And so once we heard that diagnosis, we really started working with him at home and really talking up the whole karate thing. And what we found was that the longer he was in the karate experience and the more classes he was doing, the more strength he was gaining, the less flailing around he was doing, the less falling down he was doing, he became less clumsy. And as those gross motor skills started to refine themselves, what we saw was that his endurance to write his name, Lucas, that's a very short name in comparison to some things. And it would take him 2 sit-downs to do it. He would, write an L, write a U, and then he'd get bored and want to go off and do something. And part of it was just he didn't have the strength in his hands to be able to continue on. If I showed him a coloring page and didn't put a box around a small portion of it that I wanted him to color, he would see the whole page and get very nervous because how can I do that's so much. And between going to occupational therapy, and I'm completely convinced that continuing on with his karate journey, he has gained those core muscles, he has gained those core strength to be able to support his body, so that not only can he did great at, we just randomly decided to put him in soccer. He did great at soccer, and I don't think that he would have been able to do that a year ago. And so I think that the connection of his mind and his body has been refined over this time, and he knows how his body moves and how he can make it not move when it needs to not move, because that's another piece, the whole discipline part. When Mrs. C says you got to be quiet, you got to wait your turn, or yes ma'am, yes sir, he says no mommy, yes mommy now. Instead of what or no or
I think the interesting thing to see is he's been with me for a year now, and because we have an open enrollment, he'll see in a class that he's in, he could see kids that are just starting or just starting their journey, and you really get to see the changes in him, because you look at him and you go, look how focused he is, look how disciplined he is, and it's so easy to forget where he started.
It really is. It's funny because I sit out on the bleachers watching his class, and when a new kid comes in and Lucas does a kick and he strikes down one of your
the heavy bags.
They'll say, wow, that kid's really strong. Wow, look at that kid. And I thought, goodness, a year ago it was, oh man, can he just, not fall down when he stands up the next time?
Yeah.
So it's definitely eye-opening, and to see, I almost wish I would have taken more video over the time and compare then and now.
Yes. Facebook is so good for that, because you'll take it if you post it, and then a year later it pops up and you're like, oh, look at that.
Yeah.
And I get to see, old videos of my students, and I go, oh, look how little they were, because I forget too. So, still on there, so I'm going to turn off on us. So let me see how I want to kind of bring this back around. I like what you said about him in soccer, so I'm going to touch on that. Okay.
So
I want to just touch on one thing that you said about how he tried soccer also. And some parents who come into karate, they're like, oh, I don't only want to do karate because I don't want them to miss out on other sports. And one of the nice things is with our 1 day a week structure, you can do both. And I think the part of the puzzle that some people miss is how this not only can be its own journey, but it can also really support other journeys.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's I liken it to, in high school I was a swimmer and I used to run ahead of that, you know, because I felt like the running would help the swimming. And I think in this case, the karate helped the soccer. I mean, clearly in karate, you're doing all kinds of kicks. And Lucas was famous for, you know, taking the ball and like kicking it behind him because he learned a back kick in karate. You know, I think that it really did. It set him up for some great success there.
And I see his progress in my class. I see he's getting to the point now where eventually people say, so what's next? You know, what's after kinder karate? And we do have another program, it's called Ninjability, where the motion is a little bit more fluid. Where in kinder karate, it's about, let's move, okay, let's bring it down now.
Yeah.
You know, let's focus, let's move, let's focus in small bursts. Where in the Ninjability, it'll be more of a continuous, and I think it's going to be a really fun journey to see, you know, for him too.
I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be great.
I thank you for doing this. Is there anything else, if you had advice for a parent,
Sure.
whether they're thinking about it or even a parent who's involved, what would you say is your best advice that you could give to a parent? Parent to parent.
Parent to parent, with kinder karate in particular, what I've really appreciated is that a half an hour out of your week for your kid. It's a half an hour, and it's with somebody who understands the way a kid's brain works. And so I feel like some of the parents that are new will come in and they'll be like, I can't believe it's only a half an hour. It seems, you know, we got all the way here and it's only half an hour. But that half an hour is so packed and so focused and so, I don't feel like, you know, when he first started, he could do a whole hour. It would have been chaos in the class.
Most can't. Yeah.
So I feel like a half an hour out of your week for your kid, and it's I feel like the benefits, you start to see them right away.
Yeah, you start to see them, but then the longer you're with it, it really does compound. It's like compound interest on the
It just continues to build and build and build.
But I like to say it's 30 minutes, but every minute has a meaning.
Absolutely.
You know, it's so packed. Like there's a method behind all my madness, even when you're like, what's that about? But I think for a new parent coming in, one of the things to know is we talk about activity versus program. And it's so clearly like your journey really helps me support in parents understanding that this is a program. And your child will be different, you know, at the end, rather than an activity. You know, I love sports, don't get me wrong. I'm a Pittsburgh sports girl,
Of
right?
course, we all are.
But you can do a sport and you can come out of it, I did a sport, I ran and I had fun, without maybe a change. But in this program, if you give it time, I just cannot, I don't think I've ever seen somebody who isn't changed somewhat.
Oh,
you know,
absolutely.
So
I'd even throw out there the character words. We talk about those at home. That's something that we try to embrace as well. And I feel like that's such another big part of what this whole program is about, is that it's not just the movement, it's not just the discipline, it's, you know, what is gratitude, you know? And it was so apropos that it came like right around the holiday or right before the holiday. I'm sure there was
not
some
an
methods to that.
accident.
But, you know, to talk about those character words at home and what does it mean, and, you know, Santa's not going to bring you everything you want. You need to be grateful for what it is that you have. And even now, he'll remember his words from previous sessions and understand. He understands them and he gets them and he'll use them contextually correct. So
bonus,
right? But I think that they're life lessons, you know, and I think that those life lessons combined with the discipline, combined with the activity, because, you know, we all don't get enough activity.
Right. And even at that age, especially when you're talking about gross motor skills, there's not many environments or spaces for them to work on that. You figure in school, they're like confined to their desks and the space, and now I know some schools, you know, they've taken away weekly gym. You know, you might get gym every other week. They've taken away daily recess, or if they do have daily recess now, and it's a big pet peeve of mine, teachers who want to use it as a behavior tool. You know?
Oh, goodness,
It's
no.
like these kids need that energy burn. So there's not a lot of space for them to be able to work on those gross motor skills that they get. So it is a good place for them to be able to do that, and and to work on those, and it's safe. It's a safe
It's safe.
environment
You
to do
could
it.
kick around and not hit the coffee table or your
Exactly.
sister. Or
That's our first promise. I will not kick people, or furniture. So, but I thank you, and I think this has been great, and hopefully everybody connects with something different. So hopefully this has helped you, and read the rest of the book and stay tuned for more. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Don't stop.